Many days are filled with an endless flurry of questions. When? How? Which one? Who should you spend time with? Where should you go? What should you wear, eat, bring, or buy? Later in your life, you will face important decisions about family, health, education, and career. Now, it would be nice to make these decisions wisely. So in this module, we will look at some specific methods for making good decisions. The key idea that we're going to focus on in this module is that to make what we call a rational decision, you must compare the costs and benefits of each option that you have before you and choose the one that best serves your interests. And so, as our objectives, I will first explain the requirements of rational decision making, and then I'll identify the two key types of decisions that we are faced with continuously. And finally, we'll apply the concept of something we call marginal analysis to real-world situations. By the time we finish this module, you should understand each of these objectives. So let's begin. A rational decision benefits the decision maker as much as possible. To make a rational yes or no decision, you should compare all your benefits to all your costs and say yes only if the benefits outweigh the costs. Consider a decision you make every time you get into a car, whether or not to wear a seatbelt. The major benefit of wearing a seatbelt is that it helps you avoid injury or death in the event of an accident. Most states have laws requiring seatbelt use, so wearing your seatbelt also eliminates the risk of paying a fine for not wearing one. What are the costs of wearing a seatbelt? Well, some people find seatbelts uncomfortable. It can take a moment to buckle up, and it may be considered uncool to wear a seatbelt. With more than 6 million car accidents occurring in the United States every year, most people decide that the substantial benefits of seatbelt use outweigh the costs, which makes it rational to wear one. Most economic models rest on the assumption that people are self-interested, meaning that people make decisions for their own benefit. This doesn't imply that people don't care about others. Most people do. Your interest may well include helping others and seeing them succeed. Rational, self-interested decision makers make choices to further their objectives, whatever those objectives may be. When you care about others, it is in your self-interest to help them because their benefit is your benefit. The idea of rational decision-making has become widely accepted and used in disciplines beyond economics. Political scientists, for example, apply rational decision-making to explain how voters select one candidate over another by weighing the benefits and costs associated with each candidate. Sociologists apply rational decision-making to explain mob behavior and participation in protest demonstrations and terrorism. And demographers apply it to explain dating and marriage decisions. In each case, the assumption is the same, that people weigh the benefits and costs of their options to make decisions that best serve their objectives. People who engage in rational decision-making do not always make the right decisions. Instead, rational decision-making leads people to make the best decisions possible given what they know at the time. For example, suppose you buy a bag of apples from a fruit stand. When you get home and slice the apples for your apple pie, you realize that most of the apples are rotten inside. Buying those apples turned out to be an unfortunate decision, but you made a rational decision to buy the apples if, based on your knowledge at the time, you could not identify another decision that would better serve your interests. Sometimes employers, sports teams, and people looking for a date get a bad apple too. Rational decision makers don't always get things right, but they learn from their mistakes. It would be irrational to buy apples again and again from the fruit stand with rotten apples. So, once again, we can see that wearing a seatbelt would be an example of a rational decision. Comparisons of costs and benefits are part of all rational decision making, but the best approach depends on what type of decision you are making. There are two broad types of decisions. The first involves a choice among different options. For example, deciding whether to go to a movie, a play, or a party is a choice among different options. The second type of decision involves how much of something to do. Decisions such as how much ice cream to buy, how much pizza to eat, and how much time to devote to studying are all decisions of how much of something to do. Next, we're going to examine the appropriate way to make each one of these types of decisions. When you go to the store to buy breakfast cereal, you usually have dozens of options to choose from. As consumers, our challenge is to determine which option is best. Which breakfast cereal, which car, which house, which college to go to, and which combination of ice cream flavors. Suppose you are choosing among 3 used cars, demonstrated here. The table in front of you gives information about the benefits and costs that will help you to make a rational decision in this particular case. So the first column right here lists the 3 cars you can choose from. Column 2 indicates how you feel about each car. You would prefer the Toyota to the Ford because you love the Toyota, but you only like the Ford. And you prefer the Ford to the Hyundai because the Hyundai is only okay in your mind. So that's how you feel about each car. Column 3 translates your feelings about each car into dollars. That may seem strange to you. How can a feeling be measured in dollars? All you have to do is ask yourself, what is the highest amount of money I would be willing to pay for each car if I had to? The answer you give for each car is what the car is worth to you. Economists do this sort of analysis all the time. It allows us to directly compare our choice's benefits with its costs. Naturally, the better you feel about a car, the greater the dollar measure of its benefits to you. So column 3 indicates that you would pay up to $6,000 for the Toyota. You don't like the Ford quite as much, and so the most you would pay for that would be $4,000. The Hyundai is your least favorite among these cars, and you'd be paying at most $2,500 for it. The costs of buying the cars are entered in column 4. Choosing among these cars, you use the information provided. Now, if you react emotionally and think only about how much you like each car, you'll fail to consider the costs, and you'll end up choosing the Toyota because that's the car that you love. If you think only about avoiding high costs, however, you'll choose the Hyundai Sonata. Why? Because it's the least expensive at $2,000. Neither of those choices, however, would make you as well off as you could be. A rational decision, in this particular case, will consider both benefits and costs. These are combined into a measure that we call the net benefit of a decision. The net benefit of a choice, measured in dollars, is the benefit of the choice minus its cost, as you can see in column 5. It provides a dollar measure of the gain from that choice. Now, column 5 shows how net benefit is calculated for each car. The Toyota's benefit is $6,000, but its cost is $8,000. So its net benefit is $6,000 minus $8,000, which equals negative $2,000. The net benefit is negative because the car costs more than it is worth to you. A rational decision maker would never choose an option with a negative net benefit. The net benefits from the other 2 cars, however, are positive. That tells us that either choice, in this case, the net benefit of the Ford Taurus being $1,000 and the net benefit of the Hyundai Sonata being $500, it tells us that either choice would make you better off than not buying a car because they're positive. But which choice is best? A rational decision maker will make the choice that gives them the greatest net benefit. The Ford has a net benefit of $1,000, while the Hyundai has a net benefit of $500. So the best choice is the Ford. The Ford has a net benefit of $1,000. So let's see, why is the Ford best? Well, let's take a closer look at the idea of net benefit. Suppose the Ford cost $4,000 instead of $3,000. Then the net benefit would be $4,000 minus $4,000, and that would be equal to 0. If you did buy it for $4,000, you wouldn't be better off because you'd be giving up $4,000 to get something worth exactly $4,000 to you. There would be no net benefit from doing that. But if you buy a Ford worth $4,000 to you for a price of $3,000, you come out $1,000 ahead. Now consider the Hyundai. You'd be willing to pay $2,500 for it. but you can actually buy it for $2,000. So by choosing the Hyundai, you come out $500 ahead. A net benefit of $500 is better than nothing. However, the Ford's net benefit is greater at $1,000. A rational decision maker who values the cars as shown in the table will choose the Ford. The net benefit rule of choosing the option with the greatest net benefit applies to any choice among different options. It will help you choose your classes in school, your running shoes, your activities on a Saturday night, and your career. The benefit you would get from each choice is personal. It depends on your own preferences and personality. But if you translate the personal benefit into dollars by asking yourself, what is the most I would be willing to pay for this benefit, and then subtract the cost, you get the net benefit from that choice. The best choice is the one that offers the highest net benefit. And in this particular case, you can see it is the Ford Taurus, which gives us a net benefit of $1,000. Now, remember, when placing a dollar value on the benefits you would receive from a good, be sure to think about the largest amount you would be willing to pay if you had to, not what you would like to pay. From a buyer's perspective, the ideal price for anything would be zero, and paying less is always better than paying more. But that has nothing to do with the value of the good. When you think you've identified the greatest amount of money you'd be willing to pay, check your number by asking yourself if you'd buy it if the price were a bit higher. If you would buy it if the price is higher, the product is worth more to you than you've estimated. In addition to making decisions about options, we also make decisions about how much of something to do or buy. For example, when you travel somewhere for vacation, you have to decide how many days to spend there. When you go to a cookie store at the mall, you have to decide how many cookies to buy. And whatever you do, shower, study, work out, play the trumpet, or go out for a walk, you have to decide how much time to spend on that activity. Similarly, firms have to decide things like how many workers to hire, and governments have to decide things like how many years to fight a war. A how much decision can be viewed as a question of how far to go along a series of steps. The decision to buy each unit of the good or activity, a single cookie, a day of vacation, is a step. Every time you take a step, you must decide whether to take another step. For example, at the cookie store, your first step is the decision to buy one cookie rather than none. If that first cookie would make you better off, you buy it. Then you consider the next step. Do I want to buy a second cookie? If taking that step would make you even better off, you buy a second cookie. You continue in this way, one step at a time, taking those steps that make you better off. If a step happens to make you neither better nor worse off, you are torn between taking it or not, and might as well flip a coin to decide. When you finally reach a step that would make you worse off, you stop without taking that step. For example, if buying the fourth cookie would make you worse off than buying just 3, you don't buy that cookie. The step before that, buying the third cookie, is the last one you should take. The question of whether each step makes you better off involves marginal comparisons. Marginal has a special meaning in economics. Oops. There we go. Circled the word marginal for you for emphasis. Marginal has a special meaning in economics. Now, note that the margin of a sheet of notebook paper is the section along the edge of the paper, often marked with a red vertical line that defines the boundary of the writing area. The margin is the area beyond the writing area. Likewise, in economics, the word marginal is used when we're looking a bit beyond where we are right now, at the effects of taking another step, buying another cookie, vacationing for another day, studying for another hour. When deciding how much of something to do, a rational decision maker compares the marginal benefit of the action with the marginal cost at each step along the way. The marginal benefit in this particular case is the additional benefit of taking the next step and doing something one more time. The marginal cost is the additional cost of taking the next step and doing something one more time. If the marginal benefit is greater than the marginal cost, the next step should be taken. If the marginal benefit is less than the marginal cost, then the next step should not be taken. Now let's consider an example of how this is done. When we decide how much or how many by comparing the marginal benefit and the marginal cost at each step, we are conducting marginal analysis. Let's see how marginal analysis can guide a car seller named Lynn to a good decision. Lynn's goal is to get as much money as possible for her car after subtracting the cost of any improvements she decides to make. The 4 tires on the car vary in condition from being in terrible shape to being almost brand new. Before selling the car, Lynn needs to decide which, if any, tires to replace with new ones that cost $100 each. Now, the table that you see on this slide lists the tires in order of their condition from worst to best. Along with the marginal benefit and the marginal cost, and finally, the net benefit of replacing each tire with a new one. Now, the marginal benefit of a new tire is the increase in the resale price of the car that would result from the installation of that tire. If Lynn replaces the worst tire with a new one, the improved quality and appearance of the car will allow her to sell it for $200 more. Thus, the marginal benefit of the first new tire is $200. The net benefit is the marginal benefit minus the marginal cost, which is $200 minus $100, and so that equals $100. If she replaces the second worst tire, the resale price of the car will increase by $150. The $150 marginal benefit of the second new tire is less than the $200 marginal benefit of the first new tire because the tire being replaced doesn't detract as much from the quality and appearance of the car as the worst tire did. The net benefit of the second new tire is $150 minus $100, which is equal to $50. Now, the marginal benefit of the third tire is now $90. Again, less than the one before it because the used tire replaced by the third new tire is in relatively good shape. The net benefit is $90 minus $100, which equals negative $10. The marginal benefit of the fourth new tire that we look at is just $10 because it would replace a tire that is practically brand new. The net benefit is therefore $10 minus $100, and that equals negative $90. The marginal cost of replacing each tire with a new one is $100, regardless of how many tires are replaced, because they all cost $100 apiece. In this situation, Lynn would choose to replace the first 2 tires because the marginal benefit of replacing each of them exceeds the marginal cost. That is, there is a positive net benefit of $100 from replacing the first one and $50 from replacing the second one. The $90 marginal benefit of replacing the third tire, however, is less than the $100 marginal cost. It's actually negative in this case. So Lynn should stop buying tires without taking that step. And therefore, the decision that Lynn would make would be to replace 2 tires, but not all 4 tires. So in this module, you have learned a lot about rational decision making. Whether you face a choice among different options or a decision about how much of something to buy or do, comparisons of costs and benefits will assist you in making choices that serve your interests well. The table that you see in front of you summarizes 5 lessons for rational decision making. You should pause the video now and copy these down into your notebook and learn them so that you can be informed and know how to make good decisions in the future. In addition to learning the process of making good choices, you should also be aware of some decision-making mistakes that lead people into bad choices. The final module of this unit, the next one, discusses common mistakes and how to avoid them.